It is 1953 and your mom has a 5-cent packet of Kool-Aid on the kitchen counter. You have been standing there for 20 minutes, waiting to pour it into the pitcher. That particular Saturday morning stillness, the color spreading through cold water before the sugar went in, that is what this list is made of. Number 7 on this list outsold Kool-Aid at its peak. Then a single government ruling pulled every pack from every shelf in a single year. And number 16, the candy brand that printed its boxes to look exactly like Camel and Lucky Strike and sold them to 8-year-olds for a penny at the drugstore counter. Subscribe so you don't miss what else we have coming. Counting down from number 25. Number 25. You never asked your mom for Pez because of the candy. The candy was chalky and forgettable, and you knew it. You asked because of the dispenser, the small plastic character head that clicked back and delivered a piece, a tiny machine you controlled. Character head dispensers came to America in 1952, and from that point, every kid needed the Santa, the witch, the cowboy. Your mom thought she was buying candy. You knew better. The toy was always the point. Number 24. Jell-O had been around since 1897. But in the 1950s, it became the one dessert your mom could make that looked like effort, even though it took 4 minutes and a box. The wobble, the color in the kitchen light, the cubes that held their shape for exactly 3 seconds. General Foods ran it on children's television all decade and put it in every American cookbook they could reach. The specific disappointment of asking for strawberry and getting lime is a memory this decade owns. Did she ever get the flavor right? Number 23. Wax bottle candy was never about the syrup. The syrup was the excuse. The experience was biting off the top of a wax bottle smaller than your thumb, drinking a teaspoon of grape or cherry, and then chewing the wax until your jaw gave out. Performance candy enacted at the counter with other kids watching. A penny each, a ritual, not a snack. Number 22, Mary Jane. Candy split every Halloween bag down the middle. Peanut butter and molasses chews, a penny each, introduced in 1914 by the Charles N. Miller Company in Boston. There were kids who would trade 3 Hershey bars for a handful, and kids who pitched them across the room on sight. The dense, slow chew of them, stuck to your back teeth for an hour, belonged to a very specific kind of kid. The ones who loved them still say nothing came close. Number 21. Cracker Jack had been at the ballpark since 1896, but television brought it into your living room in the 1950s. The box was the same, caramel corn and peanuts in the red and white sleeve, but the prize at the bottom was the whole reason you ate through to the end. Frito-Lay eventually acquired the brand, and the prizes shrank from metal toys to paper tabs. The candy survived. The reason to want it did not. Notice something. Sugar Smacks becomes Honey Smacks. Sugar Frosted Flakes becomes Frosted Flakes. Sugar Corn Pops becomes Corn Pops. The word sugar disappears from every major cereal brand inside a single decade, and the standard story is that this was brands modernizing their image. It was not. In the late 1970s, the Federal Trade Commission began formal hearings into sugar advertising directed at children. Congressional testimony put food company executives on the record. What the cereal companies did in response was not change the product. They changed the label. The formula that made Sugar Smacks 55% sugar by weight stayed exactly the same. Only the name that told you what it was disappeared. Number 20. Before Tony the Tiger, before the Silly Rabbit, there was Post Sugar Crisp. Launched in 1949, it was the original sweetened puffed wheat cereal, the one that proved kids would beg for a sugar-coated breakfast if given half a chance. Kellogg's created Sugar Smacks in 1953, specifically to compete. which is where the decade's cereal arms race begins. Post renamed it Golden Crisp in 1984. What happened to Sugar Bear? Number 19. Bonomo Turkish Taffy began as an accident in 1912 when too many egg whites went into a marshmallow batch. The Bonomo family bought the recipe in the late 1930s and sponsored The Magic Clown on NBC through the early 1950s. So every kid who watched knew the ritual. Hold it in your palm, strike it against a flat surface, let it shatter into pieces that melted soft on your tongue. Tootsie Roll acquired the brand in 1972 and changed the formula. It was gone by 1989. It's back now, but not quite the same. Number 18. Hawaiian Punch was developed in California in 1934 as an ice cream topping, which almost nobody knows. By the early 1950s, it arrived in canned concentrate form, and your mom poured it into a pitcher with water, and the kitchen smelled like a fruit salad. The red was almost aggressive, the kind of color you remembered before you remembered the taste. The concentrate ritual made it feel like something worth preparing. Ready-to-pour packaging eventually made it ordinary, which is a specific kind of loss. Number 17. Cocoa Puffs arrived June 27, 1958, and for a brief window it was the only chocolate-flavored ready-to-eat cereal in the country. General Mills used real Hershey's chocolate in the flavoring, and the milk in your bowl turned brown by the third spoonful. Worth noting, Sonny the Cuckoo Bird did not arrive until 1963. The kids who begged for Cocoa Puffs in the 1950s had no mascot, no catchphrase, no competition, just chocolate at breakfast. Finally. Number 16. The Philadelphia Bubblegum Corporation distributed candy cigarettes in the 1950s in boxes printed identical to Camel, Lucky Strike, Marlboro, and Winston, right down to the label design. Your mom handed them over at the drugstore counter without a second thought, because in that decade, nearly half of American adults smoked, and children imitating them seemed playful. The 1964 Surgeon General's report explicitly criticized candy cigarette makers for normalizing the habit in children. The word cigarettes was quietly replaced with sticks. Were these ever just candy? Saturday morning television in the 1950s was not designed for children. It was designed for food companies. By 1955, General Mills, Kellogg's, and Post had established that a 30-second spot inside a children's cartoon could produce direct-to-kitchen pressure that no adult advertising could replicate. A child watching Tony the Tiger declare that Sugar Frosted Flakes were great had immediate leverage with whoever controlled the cereal aisle. The Saturday morning block was an advertising architecture, engineered by food companies and tolerated by broadcasters because the arrangement paid well for everyone. It ran for 30 years. The 1990 Children's Television Act required educational programming, which broke the structure apart. The cereals did not disappear because kids stopped wanting them. The machine that manufactured that wanting was taken down by law. Number 15. Kellogg's launched Sugar Smacks in 1953 to compete with Post-Sugar Crisp and put a circus clown named Cliffy on the box. Consumer Reports later confirmed Sugar Smacks had a sugar content above 50% by weight, more than a glazed donut, and Kellogg's sold it as breakfast food for children for 30 years. Cliffy was replaced in 1957 by a seal named Smaxy. The brand became Honey Smacks in the 1980s without changing the formula. The word changed, the sugar stayed. Number 14. General Mills introduced Trix in 1954 as the first fruit-flavored cereal on an American grocery shelf. There were 3 original colors, raspberry red, orangey orange, and lemony yellow, loud enough to find across the aisle. The Trix rabbit arrived August 4th, 1959, in a commercial by copywriter Joe Harris, and the phrase "silly rabbit, Trix are for kids" entered the vocabulary within months. General Mills removed the artificial colors in 2015. Consumer demand forced them back in 2017. Some things should not have been changed. Number 13. The concept began as an accident. A powdered drink company noticed kids eating the mix raw in the 1940s. Menlo Smith founded Sunline Incorporated in St. Louis in 1952 to turn that into candy. By 1959, the powder came in color-striped paper straws, 5 flavors for a nickel: cherry, orange, grape, lemon, and lime. You tip the straw and let the sweet sour hit your tongue. Ferrara still makes them, 5 for a nickel at a counter that knew your name is finished. Number 12. Kraft introduced boxed macaroni and cheese in 1937 for 19 cents, promising a meal for 4 in 9 minutes. And by the 1950s, it had become a permanent fixture in every American kitchen cabinet. Your mom made it when she was busy, and you stood at the stove watching the orange powder dissolve into butter and milk and thought no one had ever figured out anything better. Kraft changed the formula in 2015. Did you notice before they told you? Number 11. Frederick Minnan developed Jiffy Pop in LaPorte, Indiana in 1958 with $6,000 in capital. The foil cover expanded as the kernels popped, inflating into a dome bigger than a man's fist, and 7 million packages sold in the first year. Your family stood at the stove watching it grow, waiting for the popping to slow. Orville Redenbacher's microwave popcorn arrived in 1983 and moved the whole event into a machine no one could watch. The dome stopped growing. What the Good Humor truck was really selling was not the bar. What Jiffy Pop was really selling was not the popcorn. What the corner store penny candy counter, the Saturday morning cereal bowl, the Kool-Aid pitcher on the kitchen counter were really selling was this: the experience of making a small decision independently in a world that mostly did not let children make decisions. The ice cream truck came at the same time every afternoon. You learned its schedule. You listened for the bells before anyone else did. You made the call to run or stay. The penny candy case required you to choose between 17 things with a nickel. Those were the first times you exercised judgment in a market at a scale that matched your resources exactly. That specific kind of agency was quietly removed when these products modernized, not replaced. Number 10. Nestle introduced its chocolate milk powder in 1948, and by 1955 had hired ventriloquist Jimmy Nelson to advertise it on children's television. His dummy Danny O'Day and a wooden dog named Farfel sang a jingle that ended with Farfel's jaw snapping shut, an accident from Nelson's first audition that Nestle liked so much they made him keep it. Nestle's makes the very best chocolate. The tin canister, the powder hitting cold milk, the wooden jaw clicking closed. Still sold as Nesquik. Not the same memory. Number 9, Bosco launched in 1928 in Camden, New Jersey, and spent the 1950s on Captain Kangaroo with a jingle your mom could recite without thinking, "I love Bosco, it's rich and chocolatey." The glass jar, the thick, dark syrup that clung to ice cream instead of sliding off, the Bosco bear on the label. Alfred Hitchcock used Bosco as fake blood in Psycho in 1960. Hershey's eventually won the kitchen. Bosco lost. Those who remember the glass jar still dispute that outcome. Number 8. Bazooka gum sold for a penny per piece from 1947, but became something else in 1953 when Topps wrapped each piece in a tiny comic strip featuring a kid named Joe with a black eye patch. More than 1,500 different strips would eventually be printed. Your thumb unfolded the wrapper before the gum reached your mouth. Topps removed the comics in 2012 for digital content. Consumer pressure brought them back in 2019. Was the gum ever really the point? Number 7. The Emerson Drug Company launched Fizzies in 1957, tablets for 19 cents a pack that turned tap water into something that fizzed like soda. 7 flavors, grape to root beer to cola. At its peak, Fizzies had achieved more than double the sales volume of Kool-Aid in the markets where it was available. The FDA banned cyclamate, the sweetener that made the tablets work, in 1969. Retailers cleared stock through 1970. After that, nothing. Gone before most kids who loved it understood what had happened. Number 6. Swanson introduced the TV dinner on September 10, 1953 at 98 cents a box and sold more than 10 million in its first year. The packaging looked like a miniature television, channel dials included. Turkey, stuffing, peas, sweet potatoes, 25 minutes in the oven. Kids begged for these not because the food was special, but because eating in the living room in front of the set was something adults did for fun that children had now been invited to share. That first aluminum tray stays. Almost every small company behind the products on this list went through the same door. Edwin Perkins sold Kool-Aid to General Foods in 1953. Emerson Drug, maker of Fizzies, was acquired by Warner Lambert in 1962. Frederick Menon sold Jiffy Pop to American Home Products the same year he introduced it. The Bonomo family sold Turkish Taffy to Tootsie Roll in 1972. Sunline, which made Pixie Sticks, was eventually acquired by Nestle in 1988. The founder knew what made the product irreplaceable. The acquiring company knew how to cut costs and protect shelf space. One of those things usually mattered more to the new owners. Sometimes the product survived, sometimes the recipe changed and killed it. Sometimes it disappeared and was revived years later by people who remembered what it had been. Number 5. The Chattanooga Bakery has been making moon pies since 1917. The origin involves a coal miner who framed the full moon with his hands when asked how big a snack he wanted. Graham crackers, marshmallow, chocolate coating, a nickel each. By the 1950s, the moon pie and an RC Cola had become the working man's lunch in the South. 10 cents for both. Big Bill Lister wrote a country song about the pairing in the early 1950s and made it official. The single-layer version was replaced by the double-decker in 1969. The Chattanooga Bakery still makes them. The song remains accurate. Number 4. James Dewar created Twinkies in 1930 at a bakery in Schiller Park, Illinois, and named them after a billboard for twinkle toe shoes. The filling was originally banana cream, switched to vanilla during World War II rationing. The kids who grew up in the 1950s had no idea another version existed. Hostess sponsored the Howdy Doody television program and put Twinkies in front of every American child who owned a set. Hostess went bankrupt in 2012 and returned in 2013. Were they the same Twinkies? Number 3, by the 1950s, Good Humor operated a fleet of 2,000 ice cream trucks across the country, each one on a schedule so predictable that your summer afternoons organized themselves around the bells coming from a block away. Same corners, same time, every day. The drivers went through 3 days of training, including instructions on tipping their hats to ladies. By 1960, each truck carried more than 85 different items. The bar cost a dime, and if your stick said free, you took it to the window for another. Good Humor sold its entire fleet in the mid-1970s to focus on grocery stores. 2,000 trucks, one business decision. Number 2. Kellogg's introduced Sugar Frosted Flakes in 1952 and Tony the Tiger had to compete for the job. The original boxes featured 4 mascots: Tony the Tiger, Katie the Kangaroo, Elmo the Elephant, and Newt the Gnu. Consumers chose Tony. He was designed by Eugene Kolke at the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency, and the "There Grr Reet" catchphrase was created by voice actor Thurl Ravenscroft, who held the role until his death in 2005. Kellogg's quietly removed sugar from the name in 1983 without changing the recipe. The cereal is still there. Ravenscroft's voice on those early commercials pointed at your Saturday morning bowl has not been replaced. Number 1. Edwin Perkins invented Kool-Aid in 1927 in Hastings, Nebraska, and cut the price from 10 cents to 5 cents during the Depression to keep it within reach of every family in the country. In February of 1953, he sold the company he had built to General Foods. Your mom kept the packets in the cabinet and let you pour one into the glass pitcher before anyone else was awake, the color spreading through cold water before the sugar went in. That was one of the first things you ever got to do entirely by yourself. The Pitcher Man mascot arrived in 1954. Kool-Aid is still on the shelves. Nothing on this list outlasted it. The one that stays is the Good Humor truck. Not the ice cream itself, though the bar was exactly what it needed to be. A hard chocolate shell, cold and a little waxy, and vanilla underneath that held its shape all the way to the stick. What stays is the bells from a block away. The specific quality of attention that came over a summer afternoon when you heard them before anyone else did. The sprint, the dime in your fist, the driver in his white uniform handing the bar through the window directly to you, not to your mom. What the truck was actually delivering was a transaction you ran yourself at the right scale with real stakes. You heard the bells or you did not. You had the dime or you did not. You got there in time or you watched it turn the corner. Every item on this list did something like that. It put something specific in your hands and left the rest up to you. Tell me in the comments which one you remember most, and whether your mom ever said yes the first time you asked.